Hello everyone, welcome back. So in the last video we have done many things, one of them being adding our list endpoint where we can list DTOs. Also we have now the fetch by ID endpoint, and we have an endpoint to save the DTOs, so to save the user DTO. One thing that we missed in our test is testing the updating of the DTOs, so updating of users. So we should add that. So is it possible? Can our application already support that? The answer to that question would be yes, it can, because we implemented it already later in one of the videos. In the abstract CRUDL service, we have an option to fetch the existing entity and then do the updating stuff on it. So all we have to do in this video is to actually test that. And in order to do that, it will require some changes to our existing test. So what we want to do is, once we have saved the DTO, once we have verified that the user DTO was saved correctly, we can do something like save DTO, set name, and add some different name. We can name it updated name. It doesn't really matter what we set here. We just want to have something different that we had before, which was this name plus the UID. So to do that is enough. The next thing we have to do is to actually make a request to save it or to update it. We can name it updated DTO. And here, instead of the DTO which we are sending, we are going to send a save DTO. So at this point we have updated it and we have to verify it. So our expected DTO would be the save DTO in this case, because that's where we have updated, and our actual DTO would be the updated DTO. Also in the verified here, so on the second verification where we're fetching by the ID, we can't really verify it by the DTO anymore, because now the name is different and this verification here would fail because we have updated it. So we are going to use the save DTO here. If everything goes well, we can actually use the updated DTO. It doesn't really matter because these two should match. That's what's something that we are verifying here. So let's start our application and let's run this to make sure that everything is fine. So the application has started and let's run our test. Perfect. Everything works. Everything's nice. We are able to update this. That's exactly what we wanted. So for the next step, what we are going to do is we are going to add an endpoint to be able to delete users or to be able to delete any entity. So how do we do that? Previously, we started from the abstract CRUDL service and we worked our way up to the controller, so to the abstract CRUDL controller, where we added the endpoint. But now let's do it in a bit different way. So let's start from the abstract CRUDL controller and work it down to the abstract CRUDL service. It doesn't really matter which way we go, but it's just to have something different. So we create the delete mapping because we are nice, and this will be a delete request, and we are going to delete by the ID. So our delete method is a public boolean. So we are going to return a boolean in we have case where we are able to delete something and where we are not able to, so either true or false. If we deleted it, true; if not, then false. And we are going to name it delete, and it's going to take in the path variable, which will be the integer ID. And now we are going to call return API delete, which does not exist in the API yet, but we are going to add it in the very next call. This is final, this is okay. We jump here and we go here, and so we return boolean delete, and it takes in an integer ID, and we can add some documentation to it. So it deletes the entity by ID, and yep. So we jump to the implementation. You can just click this green button here and it will jump to the abstract CRUDL service, and there we can type something like @override, or if you just type @, it will immediately offer you this menu option here. You can just hit enter and then you have your delete method here. You can just click that, and that's it. So what do we need to do next? Next one, we need to find our entity. So we have to check if there is actually an entity with this ID. So we can just copy this part here and paste it here and do a check if this is null or not. So if entity is null, we can log something like log.error. So something like that, and in this case we return false. And now we can do something like try and catch, and we can log the exception here. So what we're doing here is we're returning false because we got an exception. We want to return false, and in the case where everything works, we return true. But what is it that we are actually doing here? We are actually going to do deletion here. So repository has an option to delete by the entity. At this point we have it, and yeah, we should be able to delete it. One thing that you may notice here is that we have this find by ID in a couple of places. So we have stuff like that all over the place. Maybe we could create a helper method for it. So if we right click it, Control Shift Alt T, and we press number 9, it's to extract the method, and we can call it find by ID. So this one is taking the DTO, which is not exactly what we need. We need a DTO by ID. Yep, we want to replace this one, and we want to replace this one. Perfect. So we have a method find entity by ID, which is somewhere. Where is it? Here. Let's copy it or cut it and move it to our helper region. Okay, so we have an endpoint, we have methods implemented, everything looks nice. Let's add this to the test. So here where we are fetching by the ID, we are verifying that it exists. So if we delete it, we should just verify that it does not exist. So we can call this, and the endpoint will be exactly the same as we have here. And then we can repeat this try. So we can, and we should assert that the deleted is null. You may also see that we are now listing the entities here. In our case, it will work because we have a bunch of entities in the database from previous tutorials, or I have them, not sure if you have them. So this is not really nice in case that you do not have any, and then this is the first one that you create, then you delete it, and then you try to list them, and it will be empty, so you won't find any. So we can just take this part and cut it and move it here. So yeah, having said that and done that, we need to restart our application to make sure that the changes take place, and after that we can run our test and verify that everything is nice and great. So the application has started, and we run the tests again, and hopefully they are green. Yes, they are. We can see here that we have made a HTTP delete request, and afterwards we did a check and the test passed. So that's it. That's it for this tutorial. We managed to delete our entity. So for the next one, we are going to continue with the implementation here. We're going to extend the application a bit, and we are going to get into a bit more complicated stuff like fetching by, for example, by the modify timestamp. So this would be something that would be interesting. You could list now all of the entities, but what if you want some specific ones? What if you want to list the entities by the list of IDs that you provide, or by the modify timestamp, by created timestamp, by the name? So there are many different options. We are going to go through that, and we're going to implement some stuff. So it will be nice and exciting, so stick with me. As always, if you have any questions, if you have any remarks or something, please do write me an email or leave a comment on the video. And yeah, we see each other in the next one.